Good evening and welcome to the regular board meeting for June 22nd, 2020. We're going to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Dr. Akbar.
Here.
Mr. Alexander.
Present.
Ms. Autry.
Present.
Mr. Bravo.
Present.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Here.
Ms. McKittrick.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if we could all mute, then we will share in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I apologize for the screen glitches here. We're going to stop sharing. And I apologize for stumbling there. We had a little bit of glitches with my screen. It was kind of going in and out here. So hopefully everyone caught that. But thank you so much for being patient. And can someone just verify that I think I have the screen sharing is off now?
You're good.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are going to open it up with community and school reflections. I'll keep an eye on the chat. There's a lot more people on my screen this time around, so you may need to let me know in the chat just in case I don't see you. But would anyone, looks like Valerie has already put her hand up, so we'll let Valerie go first. And then if you'd like to join in after Valerie, please let me know.
Good evening, everyone. First, I would like to extend my sympathies to the family and friends of Nikita Crawford, who was killed by a senseless act of gun violence last week. Second, as the district reached the milestone of over 500,000, yes, over 500,000 meals served since school closed in March, I want to congratulate the child nutrition staff who kept Akron's children and continue to keep Akron's children fed. Next, I attended 2 virtual scholarship presentations last week, Thursday and Saturday, the Akron NAACP and the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. And so I want to congratulate the APS students who received these group scholarships and give them my best wishes as they pursue their post-secondary educations. And finally, I was part of a webinar earlier today from Education Week, and it was titled Embracing Racial Justice, and it featured the Chief Equity Officer of Jefferson County Schools in Louisville, Kentucky, John Marshall. And he repeated the need for school districts to not just talk the talk, but to walk the walk and to move beyond the sort of knee-jerk reactions of simply creating racial equity policies, but to take that and create true systemic change, and to move beyond the more what he called performative gestures of doing things like taking down statues or hanging Black Lives Matter posters, to creating policies, rewriting curriculum, et cetera, that facilitate real lasting change. And he also challenged us to remain vigilant and continue to question and shake up a system that's never been equitable. And so to that, I say challenge accepted. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Would anyone like to go next? Okay, Ms. Mansfield. And then Dr. Akbar.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's great to see most of your faces. I miss meeting in person. I just want to add, again, the condolences. I know we all have taken, as Akron Public School family and residents of Akron have taken Nikita Crawford's death very hard. We pray for her family and are hopeful for a resolution with the young folks turning themselves in, that can end peacefully. So our prayers are with all involved. Just want to say I do drive through that intersection every day on my way to work, and it will always stay with me. The Black Lives Matter work that's gone in on the Howard Street Hill, as someone who grew up on the North Side and knowing the history of that area, I think it's exquisite, and I can't wait to show it off to people that come into town. So the city to Councilwoman Samples for her work on that, just an amazing tribute to with all that's going on. Just want to continue to give accolades to the district and also to Dr. Akbar for his work on putting together our resolution declaring public health issue. We were the first in the country, which I didn't realize that when we were working on it. So I knew that he was working hard, we were working hard, but just really excited to see what the future holds for all of us. Also just referring to the paper and what's going on with restarting and recovery, looking forward to working with all of you. And I'm excited to have you hear all the hard work that's come out of those committees. And I'll end there. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar.
Yes, first, thank you, Valerie and Lisa, for those remarks and accepting the challenge, Valerie, and the comments about the public health crisis that is racism that we passed. And so I'll just start with that. I had one that really hopefully will guide us in the actions that we pursue as we propel the district and launch the district forward into this next chapter. Because one of the things that is for sure to me is that we can't go back to just business as normal, not only just around racism and the structures in which that support it, but also just around the way we teach and the way we engage our parents and our families and our students. And I think that that's something that has been very apparent to me over the last few weeks. And I appreciate even in the last meeting, the special meeting we had on Friday, where Dr. James, mentioned that as a challenge that we are going to accept boldly moving into the future. So I actually have been contacted by about 6 different districts now, well, actually maybe 7, about our resolution to declare racism as a public health crisis and getting tips on how to do that. And so I've been working with those districts. One of them did pass the resolution and thanked Akron Public Schools for leading the way in that. And so all the way in Michigan, we got some thanks and love at their board meeting. So that's something. I'm sorry about my dog if you heard him just now. Can't control him. And so that's something that I want to say. The other piece of it is OSBA, our Ohio School Board Association, asked me to do a presentation on Wednesday for other school board leaders around leading this conversation around race and racism. And so I want to thank Ryan Pendleton for actually making that recommendation to us, OSBA, and OSBA for working with us. And I actually had a conversation with them at lunch today. The last few things I'll say is I've heard a lot since we passed the resolution from a lot of people. Specifically, I want to just mention 2 schools that it seems like there's a lot of comments that I've received from, and that's Bookdale and Kenmore Garfield. they have, in both schools, actually, the parents and individuals involved has asked me specifically about how do we get more Black males in their buildings. When both schools asked that, and that I think that's something to think about, and figure out how can we incentivize diversifying our teaching force and our staff force in the buildings, and actually figuring out how we can do that in a way that's going to be productive, but also bring about much needed conversations, mentorship, and critical mass that's necessary to build success. And I think that was the last thing I wanted to say. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say was just kudos to Councilwoman Samples and everyone involved in the Black Lives Matter mural that was painted on North Howard Street. It was something great to actually see, and I'm so glad that we were able to do that here in this city. And I hope that all of our actions next moving forward will be impactful and will work towards some viable solutions and innovations. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander and then Ms. Autry.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'm going to congratulate Dr. Akbar for being able to take part in OSBA conversation around racism. I think this is good. We are talking about moving forward and moving our district forward. I think when we started with the resolution and when we continue to do with our policy, then I think we'll continue to move ourselves and propel us Akron Public Schools forward. I'm going to echo what Lisa said too, and a couple others in reference to Nikita Crawford. You know, it's always sad that you hear of a student who's graduating. She was a young lady who done well, graduated, and was getting ready to go to college. You know, that's big, and to have someone lose their life senselessly and it's really sad. You know, we will never know how far she could have gone, what she could have did in creating whatever it may be in our world to make it a better place for all of us. But it's sad. So I want to, give a condolences out to her family. And again, being a graduate from North High School, and anytime you graduate from a school and you hear of someone who's died, who lose their life, you feel bad because, in most schools, I think we are Akron Public Schools strong, but we also have our individual schools that we attended, and it's you hate to see something like that. So condolences to the family. I'm going to echo again to Councilwoman Tara Moser Samples. The mural, I went down and looked at it earlier this week, and they were still working on it. And then we also got pictures and saw the final project, and it looks very nice. And I think it's a start in moving a lot of things forward in our nation, because there's so much that's going on in this world. We talk about our own Nikita Crawford, but then you talk about George Floyd. There's a lot of things that has happened to cause a lot of shakeup, and it's probably what we needed, a little bit of shakeup for us to be able to move forward, not just in our local city, but in nationwide and worldwide, because there's so much that's happening. And we as Akron Public Schools talk about being the #1 school district in the nation. I think we're working towards that, and we got to continue to move towards that with what we're doing in our district to make things move forward in our district, but also to show other school districts across the state of Ohio and the country that Akron Public Schools is capable of being #1 school district in the country and the nation, and will be the #1 school district in the nation with the work that we're doing and with the work that our superintendent and our board. I want to thank our new board members for coming on and, spicing up a little bit and putting some more air on the fire that we already had to keep that fire burning so we can move forward. So thank you all. And thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ms. Autry and then Dr. Hall.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to echo everything as far as the condolences offered to all of those involved and touched by the death of the young lady. I also wanted to acknowledge as well Tara Samples' work on that mural is beautiful, and it's awesome to have that piece of history that was already at a historical site. Also, since we last met, I just wanted to mention and thank Mary Outley and Tammy Brady, who I had an orientation with, and just thank them for their work and their entire team, as well as leaders in our district. And then lastly, again, thanking Dr. Akbar, for his leadership and putting us even more on the map. And I just look forward to the opportunity to help improve our district and build upon the strengths that we already have. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Hall?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. So obviously I'm going to repeat some of the things that you all have echoed. I think first, I too want to start by extending sincere condolences to Nikita Crawford's family. Like Bruce and Lisa, I'm also a North High School graduate, and so there is that sort of extra, sort of kick, when it's someone that shares your same alma mater, because the quality and caliber of students that have gone through there, through that school over the years, and so yeah, I think the point you've all made around we're just never going to know how brightly she could have shined. And so that's so especially painful. And so next, I think it's critical that we also acknowledge Tara Mosley Sample's work as well. I think as many of you have already done. Not only was she a driving force behind the solidarity event we had several weeks ago, as mentioned, she's been a driving force behind getting this mural put in place. And so the amount of energy that she has expended this last several weeks, has been nothing short of amazing. And so I think it's important that we acknowledge that. She's been a leader, and she has been called to action and has been acting. And I think she's an example, for all of us in that regard. I think as well, I think we need to, Lisa, Ms. Mansfield, I didn't know that we were the first in the country either until I saw the article. I was really, because when you think of progressive places in the country, you don't always think of Ohio. And I don't mean that to disparage our home state, but, do we think of places like New York and California? The fact that Akron, Ohio was the first in the nation, really was something that was a very pleasant surprise that we could once again, be a leader, in the realm of public education. And so I want to thank Dr. Akbar for his leadership around that work too. And then I know this is obviously a tumultuous time, but as some of you have already echoed in our conversations with Dr. James and his team, we've also talked a lot about this is a real opportunity for us to craft our own bold goals that will sort of guide us into the future as well, with equity front, right? And so let me just conclude by saying that I really I know that is something that you guys have maybe heard me say before, but in the bottom of my heart, I'm so and have the work with all of you. We have been a united group, and I think what this district is going to see as we sort of move forward is just how far we can go, under the banner of unity and equity. So I'll conclude my remarks here, Mr. President.
Thank you so much. That will conclude community and school reflections for today, unless anyone has anything else to add. Hearing nothing, we have no requests to address the board, recognitions, or communications. So we are ready for approval of the previous meeting minutes from our regular meeting of June 8th, 2020. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. McKittrick and a second by Dr. Akbar. Any comments, questions, or discussion on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick?
Yes.
Dr. Akbar?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent's recommendations?
Yes, Mr. President. I wish to recommend approval of the personnel recommendations presented in categories 5 through 16.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the personnel recommendations?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Ms. Autry, a second by Ms. Mansfield. I know there are bios. Are we going to do anything with those, Mr. Superintendent?
No, they were sent both last Wednesday and also today.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second on the personnel recommendations. Any comments, questions, or discussion from the board? Mr. Alexander?
Yes, I wanted to ask a question. I know we normally have summer school, and summer school starts soon. And this year, I know it's going to be a little different. Can we explain a little bit how summer school is going to happen this year? I don't know if someone else is going to explain that. That's just a question I wanted to ask.
I actually believe we're going to have something about that under a committee report from Instructional Policy and Student Achievement.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other comments, questions, or discussion for personnel? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick?
Yes.
Dr. Akbar?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Next, Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the resolutions and motions presented in category 21.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. McKittrick, a second by Mr. Alexander on the consent agenda items. Any comments, questions, or discussion? Ms. Mansfield?
Thank you. Sorry, I'm having some tech issues tonight. I'm lagging behind just a little, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I just wanted to highlight the 6 grants awards that are in the consent agenda tonight. There's a total of amount of $65,670 from the GAR Foundation. And these are an education initiative grants. They're specifically designed to provide educators with seed money for special projects that push their students to creativity and innovation, critical thinking, problem solving, and integrate technology. The GAR Foundation is one of our most valued partners with Akron Public Schools because of their support already for our college and career academies and our essential experiences at the elementary level. But we should never lose sight of these projects that are for individual teachers that spur their innovation. And big thanks to Christine Mayer, the president of GAR, Kirsten Toth, the senior vice president. And those grants were listed in your board member letter in case you wanted to check on those. And congratulations to all of the teachers who put in for those grants. It's a stressful process and they did a great job.
Thank you, Ms. Mansfield. Dr. Hall?
Yeah, thanks. I had a question. In customary, that beings have a point, have an opportunity at some point or to kind of present on sort of the outcomes or really the fruits of their labor. Because again, I'm keenly interested to hear money ends up being spent and what kinds of sort of great interventions and or programs that they're able to build with these monies.
Yeah, part of that grant includes a report out required by GAR Foundation. And we, in the past, have had some of those people come to the board, so we can definitely do that. And there's also an annual program at GAR Foundation about this, which kind of summarizes and some awards that are given. So yeah, we can have some of these folks come to the board and present.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or discussion on the consent agenda items? Yes, Ms. Autry.
Yes, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank also the donors to our Project Rise program that helps benefit our homeless students. I have noticed in the last few meetings an uptick, it seems, in some of those donations. So I just wanted to acknowledge and thank those individuals as well as a few churches as well who donated to Project Rise.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Sorry, yes.
thank you. Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
thank you.
Next, Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the business affairs recommendations presented in category 23.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick and Dr. Akbar. Any comments, questions, or discussion on the business affairs agenda items? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Yes, Mr. President. The only thing I have to report is right now we have scheduled a special board meeting for June 29th, a week from today. And at that board meeting, my staff and I will present our plans or where they stand now for reopening school. I'm hoping that we'll hear from the governor this week about the state plan for reopening and the directions that'll be given to us. But, regardless if that happens or not, we'll be presenting our options for how school will be open. And if we don't have that report from the state, we'll be prefacing all of our stuff about, it can look like this, depending on what the health guidelines are going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and step out on a limb and just deliver that so board members are informed about our lines of thinking as we approach the 2020-21 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. And for President's report, I'll just pick up there with what the superintendent's saying. There was a great article today in the paper that talked about and highlighted just some of the difficult decisions that have to be made as we determine what it looks like in the fall. And, just kudos to our staff and to all of the parents and community members and faculty that have been part of the restart teams. I know I saw several of you joining some of those meetings and those committees and subcommittees. Really fantastic thoughts going into those, and just want to say thank you to everyone that's played a part in that. There's a lot of information still yet to be found out from the state, and so as the superintendent said, I think he's going to give us what the options could be and most likely might be, but we're just going to have to be flexible and know that things can change at any moment. So much appreciation for all of the work that you guys are putting in on those. I also just want to echo what some of our board members said earlier. Our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers go out to Nikita Crawford's family as they lay her to rest and memorialize her this coming week. Many thanks to the community and to the city of Akron and the Akron City Police Department for the work that they've done on this. It's a terrible tragedy, and would like to encourage and pick up on the words that I know Ms. Mansfield started with the two suspects that are still at large, and encourage them to turn themselves in and bring this to a peaceful resolution so that Nikita Crawford's family can begin the healing process. Also want to give a shout out to the All-Star Preps were held this last week, and we had several students that were featured in the Best of Greater Akron 2020 as All-Star athletes, and just want to give them a shout out. They came from high schools all across our district, and they are phenomenal in what they do. And they're not only stellar athletes, but they are also scholars. And so we just want to give them a shout out and congratulate them. And I hope that at some point we get to recognize you in person again, but know that we were watching and we're excited to celebrate you. As the superintendent said, we do have two special meetings coming up, June 29th and July 1st. June 29th is primarily going to be dedicated to handling appropriations for the coming year, as well as reviewing the recommendations that the superintendent and his staff will be putting out to the board in terms of what school will look like next fall. July 1st is where we pick up on our third special meeting to continue our levy discussions. So we look forward to seeing you there. And not directly related to our levy discussions, but something that you all know that Dr. Akbar and I have been working on are two forums where we connect with folks in the community to talk about how we are doing as a district and to get some feedback and to learn more about what our community would like to see from us as we launch into 2020, 2021 and beyond. And so we have had some discussions. The first one, there will be two, is what we are looking at. And the first one we would like to hear from parents and teachers. And so we have already had a really good and productive conversation last Friday evening with the Akron Council of PTA leadership. And we will have a discussion hopefully this week with our union leadership with AEA. And then our second forum will be focused on community groups and partners. And so we're hoping to try and schedule both of those after the 4th of July. And so we will be in contact with each of you for scheduling purposes. And Dr. Akbar, I don't know if you'd like to add anything to that.
We just have been working with about 5 different community organizations that we partner with and have a vested interest in the success of the district to get their thoughts. And really, I'll add to what Patrick said. We're not really trying to get necessarily people's opinions on all the bad things we're doing or anything like that. What we want is, as we as a board are going into our vision casting season, which hopefully Patrick will talk about next, we want to get feedback from individuals directly connected, invested in the success of our district on what they want the district to look like. What are some of the things that they hope for in the future for APS? So as we as a board have that discussion and setting that vision for the next phase of our district, that we have received the feedback of some people that work with our schools and have a vested interest in our schools.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar. Well said. And thanks for teeing it up for me too. As some of you know, we used to do our retreat. We moved our retreats a couple of years ago to the summer to coincide with the beginning of the school year as we're looking at appropriations and things like that. So COVID has slowed us down, but it hasn't deterred us completely. So we are also going to be reaching out to you to schedule one or more retreat sessions. We may pose a question to you as to whether we want to maybe even break that down into 2 sessions so that we can devote an adequate amount of time to do some visioning and start to narrow down what we see as our vision, our top 3, 4, 5 things that we'd like to see as Akron Public Schools moves forward. So we will be reaching out to you for some dates on retreat as well. And then the final thing, unless I'm forgetting anything on my list here, but the final thing also is it is time to start thinking about performance evaluations for our superintendent and our CFO. So we will also be touching base with you very shortly. And typically what we will do is send that the performance evaluation document out to you, but we'll supply you with some information on how we typically handle those as well. So stay tuned to your email for more to come on that. Are there any questions for me or for the superintendent? Dr. Akbar, I know I think you had said that you may have a question for the superintendent, and I might have missed it before I started my report.
Yes, it was just about the reopening of the schools for fall. One of the it might be a question, but it really might just be a comment, just as a point of consideration, because I'm sure you don't even know the answer to it yet. But one of the questions I consistently get is, when will be the absolute deadline of when we will know what the school's going to be like, the school year is going to be like? And what I've been sharing with people is, not only do we have to wait on state guidelines, we also have to continuously assess what's going on, because you never know. And we can have one plan, and then the day before school start, have to come up with a whole new plan. So I don't know if that is maybe the same way you would have answered that question, but I just thought that since that's a question I've gotten a lot, to just be prepared to answer that in your presentation.
Right. No, absolutely. It'll be very dependent upon the guidelines that we get from the Ohio Department of Health, because that'll determine if we have to continue to, social distance in a classroom. Will be limited to how many kids we can put in a building, how many kids we can put on a bus. So as soon as we get those guidelines, and believe me, we're not the only ones. A whole, every district in the state's waiting on those guidelines, so we can all figure out how we're going to approach the start of school.
Thank you. Dr. Hall?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. I actually had, it's more of a comment / question as related to the community forums for levy feedback. I guess as I think my way through this, I'm wondering sort of, this is a different time, obviously. And I know that we're all engaged and want to see those sessions sort of robustly attended in some way, shape, or form, whether it's, people calling in, people sort of videoing in. Wondering sort of how historically those sessions have been attended, and I guess secondarily, what are we going to do, with the current state being what it is, to ensure that we have folks attending these sessions, in this go around.
So the short answer is we've never done them like this before, so we'll see. But that's really part of why we're partnering with some of these groups. The Akron Council of PTAs has a great network of parents and parent volunteers and grandparent volunteers to try and help us connect with the parents. And certainly AEA, along with our staff, has a way to reach our teachers to try and encourage them to participate. And then the community groups that we're working with, the same thing. So the key to this was hopefully trying to get community partners that can help us drive some folks to participate in these forums. Though I would like to point out again too that it's not a direct tie to the levy. It's more forward thinking as part of the visioning process. It's more of a feedback. So the hope is, and when we reach out to you with some additional information, the hope is that we're the ones asking some of the questions and listening versus where we're doing most of the talking. So really what we're doing is trying to listen as we head into the visioning process. And Dr. Akbar, I don't know if you want to add to that, but that's really what that is. It's not so much levy tied and not so much reverse thinking as it is forward thinking towards the future.
So quick clarification question then. My assumption is that historically we've done something like this historically, right? So maybe not in this not trying to do it online, but I'm saying historically, I'm assuming that we've done something like this. I guess, and thank you for answering part 2 of my question. I guess going back to part 1, I mean, historically, when these were in person, how well were they attended? You know, have they been robustly attended in the past, or was this an opportunity in the past around attendance as well? And so I asked that question because if historically these have not been well attended or optimally attended, I think we're all going to need to think outside the box to ensure that we do all that we can to entice or engage folks to join in a way that may seem more difficult or laborious to others. So,
sure. Well, and so the short answer there too, just and Lisa and Bruce, feel free to jump in, but as a school board, we haven't typically done a lot of town hall style forums. We're usually engaging because there's already been built-in audiences within all of the clusters as far as the ward meetings go. And so we're typically visiting the different ward meetings and doing things like that. We have had some town halls in the past, but I would say, and Lisa can probably attest to this too, and I know she's got a comment, they've been attended more like a ward meeting for the few that we've done. And then one more practical consideration just to think of is even if we get, say, 20 people to attend between parents and teachers, at a meeting that's set for maybe an hour, even 2 hours, that's 3 to 6 minutes per person if everybody went around and spoke. So while everyone will be invited and we'll welcome as many want to jump on and have something to say, practically speaking, there's going to be some time considerations too if everyone's going to have a meaningful conversation within a 1, 2, or 3 or 6 hour period. So Lisa, I'll let you jump in.
Sure. It's a really valid question, Dr. Hall. And I think Patrick's kind of covered it. The answer is this has not been done. So usually we would go to a board meeting, we would go to a PTA meeting, we would go and we would talk about the needs. We would talk about our vision. What I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Akbar or Mr. President, this sounds more like we're creating, partly by necessity, but partly by desire, we're going to the public and saying, what is your vision for your schools? This sounds much more forward thinking than anything I've participated in. We do it as a district. We've done it as a board. I'm trying to think of examples in the last 11 years where I can think of something that sounds quite like this, and I can't. So I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what people say. Again, some of it's by necessity and some of it's by design, it sounds like. So long and short is this is new.
Thank you.
Mr.
Allocating. And then Dr.
Okay. Yes. And Dr. Hall, you are right. We're going to have to think outside the box on this. We haven't really had done anything similar to this here, as Lisa said, and Patrick has stated. But we did go to the schools, and we had school board meetings at the schools, and they weren't really well attended. We thought there were going to be more people there. There were a couple of schools that were more than others, but we didn't get a lot of people that showed up. And then some years before, even before Patrick got on the board, Lisa and I and Mrs. Sims put together some town halls, and we would put them together at the libraries, and we wanted people to come out to talk to us, to see what's going on, ask questions. And again, the same as we did with the schools, there were only a few people at most of those meetings, but then you had others who attended some of the others that more than they did. So it is going to be more forward thinking. We're going to do some thinking outside the box. And I do like the idea what Mr. Bravo and Dr. Akbar are doing by getting others involved with the PTA, teachers, with the unions, the community, so we can get everybody. And I think that'll create the groundswell so people will come and participate and allow, give us more information as well as allow us to share what we want to see as well. So I think it's going to be really good. I like that idea of having those individuals come and bring those groups together and let them bring their people together so that we can have a good discussion.
Thank you. Dr. Akbar, did you have something?
Yeah, just briefly, I think that one of the main reasons why we're doing this in this fashion is because usually when you see in diversity work and when you talk about inclusion of voices, you usually see people saying that they are doing work to include people in conversations by inviting them to come to a session where they get talked at. And it's not something that people technically do on purpose. It's not like you said it. Most times they're not set up that way, but that's how they end up becoming. And so that's something that when we talk about inclusion work, we have to go through organizations that people trust already and allow them to lead the discussions while we as the elected body are listening and taking in what it is that they're thinking so that we can guide the work that we do. So that's the vein in which this is being constructed. And it's just one more step in the direction of including voices and people to the table that haven't traditionally been included, not because they've been excluded directly or intentionally. It's just the way things have happened and tend to happen when you're not as intentional as what we're being right now.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. Any other questions for me or the superintendent on our reports? Hearing none. Mr. Pendleton, Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will partner tonight with the Finance Committee during their report on ed choice in the state budget. So if it's okay, I'll defer, and when we start to go through the finance report, I'll participate there.
Good, thank you. Committee reports, legal contracts, and board policy.
You want to go ahead, Dr.?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was on mute and I didn't realize I put myself back on mute. So sorry. All right. So the board legal contracts and board policy committee met about 2 weeks ago, actually right after our last meeting. And we discussed three major things. And then I'll let Bruce jump in on the he's going to discuss the policies that we have before you for a first reading today. But we discussed initial brainstorming around the racial equity policy. We're currently in the process of gathering information and gathering what other districts have done around their racial equity policy. So we're getting some of that information to guide our work. We're also looking at setting timelines for when we do introduce policies so that they don't sit out there for a long period of time. And we specifically would like to move forward with the naming policy for buildings and fields and different parts of our buildings. And so we're going to encourage and invite all the board members, or have many that are available, to come to our next board policy committee meeting so that we can finalize that naming policy and just give a slight nudge to, if you can't come to look at it, everyone has access to it, and provide us that feedback, because we would like to move forward. We do know we have, at least we've started a construction of the last building, school building, to be built. And so we know that that's going to be an important process in that process, as well as other things moving forward. So I think that those are the main things.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Akbar. And there's one other thing that we're going to be having some more updates from Neola. They have updates they want to get out to us, and we'll be coming hopefully pretty soon. They normally get them to us between midsummer or so, but we want to look at that so we can move forward with any changes that we may need to move on as far as what they give to us. I have, for the first of three readings for tonight of our policies, revised policy 6320, which is purchases. And I have a new policy 6325, procurements, which is federal funds and grants. This is the first of 3 readings. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any comments, questions, or discussion on legal contracts and board policy? Dr. Akbar, do you have more?
I just want to answer Lisa's question because it was a great question. I forgot to mention it. Our next meeting is July 6th at 4:30. So that's Monday, July 6th at 4:30.
Great, thank you. Anything else for legal contracts and board policy? All right, finance and capital management.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll go ahead and start. So the Finance Committee met a week ago today. And one of the things were continued conversations regarding the Ed Choice voucher program and the potential financial impact on us. And I believe our treasurer will have even further updates, but just a reminder, this school year, we went from 27 up to 34 school buildings in our district who are Ed Choice voucher eligible schools, currently with about 1,700 of our students. And if legislation passes, that could increase by 500 students, 200 of which have never even set foot in an APS building. So that's just some information that we discuss. And that also, as students may decide to come back into our district, we don't benefit from that at all due to the caps on state funding. But we certainly would lose if students, continue to use that scholarship. And then also, I believe he'll give more information about the potential or at least discussion of joining the coalition regarding the Ed Choice voucher program.
Thanks, Ms. Autry. And, I think the second bucket, that we sort of talked about was we had a broad discussion around district-wide financial information. So I think as everyone on this meeting is well aware of, due to the impacts of COVID on the state's, sales tax receipts and also sort of income tax receipts as well. At the state level, it was necessary to reduce budgets. And so I think most school districts were thinking that there'd be approximately a 10% reduction in their budget. The Ohio taxation department, may update, it did come in better than expected. So, the current thinking now is that it could be a 3 to 5% reduction. And I think it's important to think about this in the backdrop of sort of what's happening in Ohio as a whole, right? Where you have an unemployment rate in Ohio approaching 17%. Versus a national unemployment rate that's only 13 to 14%. So this is sort of the environment in which this is all taking place. I think the next consideration that we also talked through, I know that I asked specifically about starting to model financially and planning financially for how students would be returning to school amid all the COVID-19 mandates, so as it relates to sort of the costs around the cleaning and maybe having to provide masks and things like that, and sort of other additional costs, sort of planning for that. We also reviewed current spending for APS and then sort of a month over month comparison versus, this is basically looking at actual versus budget. And then we talked through, expenses that were that they were coded to funds that are provided by the CARES Act. So recall the CARES Act, provided approximately $10 million to our school district to help to offset some of the consequences, if you will, of COVID. And so thus far we've coded about $1.7 million of that 10, to the CARES Act. Generally speaking, APS, is currently leveraging sort of grant funds, so really the priority is, we're leveraging grant funds, and then we're looking at CARES Act funding, and then finally, we default to the general fund to ultimately protect our classroom for the coming year. And so I think it's been mentioned earlier, throughout this meeting, but there are a lot of questions as relates to sort of the cost of returning to school. And I think, as Dr. James, alluded to earlier, we're still waiting on those mandates around the requirements, so it's theoretically possible. I mean, I don't know how likely we think it is, but it's possible that there may not be a 6 feet in the fall. There may be different mandates or recommendations, if you will, around about wearing masks versus not wearing masks, and various cleaning requirements. So again, so there's still a whole lot out there, and so obviously from a finance standpoint, we're sort of waiting with bated breath, if you will, to really get those, to see those recommendations, so we can begin to estimate what those dollar amounts look like. I think the next thing we talked about was we sort of talked, we had a really brief healthcare discussion. So I know that we've talked about sort of having a more robust one in our next meeting or two, but we sort of talked at a high level about the insurance rates for those bargaining units that have already ratified contracts, that we'd see a 5% increase in their insurance rates starting July 1, 2020, which when we start looking at sort of national averages, 5% is actually very, very, very competitive. We also had a conversation around energy efficiency in our buildings. So we're utilizing the Energy Star ratings and had a conversation around, because again, as we're sort of projecting forward, anywhere that we can, save cost, by being fiscally responsible, even as it gets right down to our buildings and how long the lights stay on and how long the AC stays on, and and how responsible we are. It's kind of like in your own house, right? You don't leave the house and leave the lights on, right? So, or at least we don't in my house, right? So this is sort of that practical conversation around how can we get the most out of our buildings from an energy efficiency standpoint. So, and then we also talked, this has been kind of the theme that we've talked about the last couple of meetings, but we've talked about the equity policy, that we'd like to sort of see expanded, if you will, and how we can, and how we can sort of use that policy to sort of monitor that the district was spending dollars equitably for all students district-wide. And so specifically, there were 2 points that we talked about specifically as related to that. Number one was we talked about sort of defining what need looks like across our district, right? So we talked about sort of schools that need more than other schools. Well, really trying to do some work around defining what need looks like, whether it's socioeconomic, wraparound services, whether it's academic, discipline, so there's lots of different sort of bullet points that one can run down when assessing need or utilizing and quantifying need. So there'll be some follow-up that's needed there. And then I know Ms. Audrey also asked, a really good question around how are we ensuring that we're spending from our sports expenditures? How are we ensuring that we're spending those dollars? Well, how do we ensure that those dollars are being spent equitably, budgeted and spent equity across the district as well? So, and then I'll defer to Ms. Audrey to take us home.
Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty good. And I think Mr. Pendleton has some more details as far as the voice. I think he's had an update on that, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. I'd just like to add about the ed choice in the board's previous discussion about joining a potential lawsuit and deadlines. So as you know, the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy was working and is facilitating a group of districts to join a lawsuit that had, I know some of you had been contacted about a potential deadline or deadline looming here before the end of June. Really, the increased attention around that date was to petition state agencies to stop those deductions from school districts. So whether or not there was one district or 10 districts that was a party to a lawsuit, that could take place. I did call the executive director of the coalition and talk to Mr. Phyllis in detail about the districts who have joined, who are interested. So after we reviewed that, realizing that there wasn't really a deadline of June 30th, that there would be a capital outlay of about $2 per pupil which was about $40,000 to join the lawsuit. We wanted to see what our colleagues in the Ohio 8 were doing, partner with them. The deadline, in my opinion, and I've talked to our in-house counsel about this as well, is more around when the legislature is going to debate the rules into effect in February to April of 21. And we know that the legislature is on break, so we have adequate time, in my opinion, to debate those further. I don't believe we should join a lawsuit at this time. However, I think Finance Committee and the board should stay very close to the conversation and the General Assembly's discussion about that. So that was my addition. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you. And I know we're going to rely heavily on the Finance Committee to help guide us. There's a lot of considerations that go into that, and it's a big decision. So thank you for your work there. Is there anything else from the Finance Committee before we open it up for questions?
No, Mr. President, I think that does it for us.
Thank you, Ms. Autry. Dr. Hall. Dr. Akbar, I believe you had a question for Finance Committee, and anyone else, please feel free to leave a note in the comments.
I do have a question, but I want to wait for Lisa to come back. She just fell off.
Thank you for catching that. I've been watching and I did not see her fall off. Let's pause the meeting for just a moment. And I am reaching out to her right now. For those in the public that are watching, anytime one of our board members falls off, we do pause the meeting per the Ohio Attorney General guidelines and wait for that person to be able to rejoin. And I see Lisa's joining us again now. So Lisa, let me know when you're fully back.
I am. I'm going to try to also do the phone just in case, because my husband's apparently trying to do something at the same time, and because we're so close to a school, my Chromebook's trying to connect to APS, and I'm not that close to the school, so sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you. Dr. Akbar, go ahead with your question.
All right, so I respect everything that and all the information that the Finance Committee presented. I guess I'm just curious about when you looked at the resolution and the Ed Choice lawsuit, what type of costs are associated with it besides the initial joining costs? Were you able to determine that and what the specific cost to APS would be moving beyond just that initial join us costs?
Yeah, and let me take first shot at this, Ryan, and then please jump in. But so when you sort of think about this process, I think DeRolf is kind of the thing that comes to people's minds when you think about taking on the General Assembly. So in addition to the $40,000, you're looking at a case that could go on for years with appeals. And so, going back, to the DeRolf decisions, there were 4 of those that took place over a decade minimum. So by the time it was all said and done, you had districts that had spent, millions of dollars, as a part of DeRolf, and we could sort of debate about, on the merits, whether or not it would have been worth it. So $40,000, is kind of gets you a seat at the table, if you will. But I think that's could be deceiving because, again, it just could balloon from there. And there's just no telling how long this could go on. So that's where I think, we'll make sure that, and again, this is where cross-pollination between these board committees sort of takes place, right? So I know that, this may come up in legal policy as well. But I think that a lot of sort of thought is going to have to go into whether or not we are going to commit our financial resources to join a lawsuit that may, in the end, I would argue in the end, provide any real benefit to us in this district. So, but as we get, I think that, my prediction on it could change. I don't know if there's also following this as well. But I think we're absolutely right. And again, this was a topic of conversation, right, in our committee meeting. Just right now, where things stand is we need to be better stewards of that money and ensure that before we commit to this, that we have as much again in trying to determine whether or not this is going to be an appropriate use of resources for the district, especially in this time of COVID. So to Ryan, if he wants to add, or Ms. Autry, they want to add anything else to my comments.
I'd like to add that it's not that the recommendation is permanent not to join the lawsuit either. Obviously, things can and will change with this. The important part, again, is to pay attention about when this debate comes up in front of the legislature and make sure that we have the necessary information, leverage, and talking points. We have been planning with this Ed Choice statewide committee to even potentially have a few of you testify, which I think it's always good if practitioners or board members are testifying, so that they're hearing directly from districts. But my point, I believe, that I'd like to add is, as a standalone one of the urbans who could potentially shoulder $40,000, it's a relative expense to the size of the district. So if we were to file in court with 5 districts and we were by far 5 times as large as the other districts, without knowing how the legal makeup of this consortia would be, the only recommendation I could make to this board if we were to participate in the lawsuit is if we would get the relative number of votes on future points in potential litigation. So, right, we need to make sure that there's others, especially in the Ohio 8, that are, I know they are evaluating it. I know my colleagues are evaluating it. So I think we'll see more of what their action plan is over the summer. Thank you.
Again, I think you're getting to a matter of diplomacy as well as finances. Anything else from the Finance Committee? Yes, Ms. Autry.
Yeah, and so separate but related topic, it just refreshed my memory. One of the other things that we did discuss, or that I brought up, is as we're moving forward, whether we decide to be a part of this coalition or not, I just don't want us to underestimate what we have in our toolbox as far as advocacy and educating our families on these issues, because not only, can we testify, but so can parents and students who are directly affected by this. So, I always have to put that PTA spin on things, but PTA is rooted in advocacy. So I just wanted to make sure that I mention that as well.
Thank you. Good point. Anything else from Finance Committee or questions to Finance Committee? All right, hearing none. Instructional policy and student achievement.
Thank you, Mr. President. As part of our report tonight, we are updating the board about the reopening and recovery work going on in the district. At our board meeting on the 29th, as you heard, the superintendent will bring us recommendations about the reopening for fall and what that's going to look like as we await guidelines from the state. The second piece of that work is the recovery, and that's to help with the lost content any students may have experienced. And while we know some students flourish while learning from home online, We also know that some students were inconsistent in their engagement with learning. And so our two executive directors, Mary Atlee Kelly for elementary and Mark Black for secondary, work with curriculum staff under the direction of Karen Gijic, with teachers, principals, community partners, and parents to expand summer offerings to help with that recovery. The goal was to put programming in place to address the needs of students and to minimize the typical summer slide. So we have Ms. Atlee Kelly, Mr. Black, and Ms. Carla Chapman here, and they're going to review the summer offerings for the board. And we want to strongly encourage all parents and guardians and any family members listening to take advantage of these summer opportunities being offered. And so now we'll have our directors. Thank you.
So good evening. I am so excited to have this opportunity to share with you programs that have been developed in collaboration with our APS staff and community partners to provide some amazing summer learning opportunities to our students. And I'm going to direct you to I'm going to share my screen with you. And Mark, Carla, and myself will be walking you through these learning opportunities. Just want to start off by thanking Dr. James and our board members for the funding allocations and your support. And due to all of this, we are able to provide the programs I'm going to walk you through at no cost to our families. So the first program I would like to highlight is our early launch program. What is so extremely exciting about this is we are going to give our students and our staff an opportunity to get a jump start on the 2020-21 school year by inviting all of our incoming first grade through fourth grade students and staff to return to school 4 weeks early. So the program will start July 20th and run through August 14th. And again, our goal is to connect our students with the teachers they will have in the fall. All of this will be virtual. Our teachers will create schedules for our students, and we will use our iReady platform, also use Google Classroom and Google Meet. Students will be scheduled to have small group instruction with their teachers, a minimum of 40 minutes per content area a week. And as they're working with their teachers, we will be able to see any problems that they're engaging in and be proactive in addressing those skill deficits that they have, again, in the content areas of reading and math. Our second area, that program that we're working on, is our iReady program. This is also exciting. It is a 10-week program. We have hired teachers who will oversee the program, which have already started June 15th through August 14th. Again, we're working in the areas of both reading and math. Students started this work at the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year, and we are continuing. So each student was given their own learning path, and that was decided based on a diagnostic that they took in the fall. And then they took the diagnostic again in December. And their learning paths are individualized, and the teachers push out lessons, again, based on the skill deficits that the students have displayed an area of need in. So the teachers are working very closely. Just an example, just in the 1 week that our teachers have been working with our students, we have addressed over 113 alerts, which if the alerts are not addressed, the students cannot move forward with their learning. So that is very exciting to us. It allows the kids, again, to help close that learning gap by having some one-on-one time with the teacher to see exactly where they're struggling, to provide that instruction where needed, and then to get them moving on. Our next tile represents a partnership that we have with Spark. We're really excited that we can offer programming to our incoming kindergarten students. So the students, as they are enrolled into APS, we will be working with Howard Lawson and his department to assign each student an email and also a Chromebook. We will do some professional development with the family so that they learn how to get onto our landing page and be able to facilitate that with their students. So with our Spark program and the community partners that's within that program, we're going to be working with the fire department and also with the police department. We'll be hosting a safety town where a teacher will help the parents maneuver through the videos, and they can watch and do all the activities as many times as they like during that period, starting July 20th through August 28th. The next program is our Bridge to Kindergarten. This is in partnership with Project Grad Akron. And again, it's a focus on our pre-K to K students, where they will do both literacy and math activities. And the whole goal is to get them acclimated to the kindergarten experience, just like Spark, so that when they begin kindergarten, they are more at ease. Then I would like to take you to our Akron After School. Akron After School is normally an after-school enrichment programming for us, but due to the COVID-19, we did have some funding remaining that we were permitted to use to provide some enrichment activities during the summer. And so our students, again, will have exposure to both literacy and math, and through enrichment opportunities. We have teachers creating the opportunities like cooking classes, and we also have different community partners that will be offering experiences for our students. Then we will continue to offer reading challenges. I'm just going to click on this one to sort of give you an idea of what it looks like. So thank you. Under the leadership of Megan Mannion, our students will have a summer bookshelf, and the themes are connected to our essential learning experiences. So for instance, challenge number 1 is around poetry and music, and students at the different grade levels will click, and I'm going to click on first grade. And then they will engage in the challenge that's presented to them. In this case, our first graders in Akron, their essential learning experience was around the zoo, and they had the zoo come and visit them first in the classroom, and then they actually took a field experience to the zoo. And so they have books on their bookshelf around zoo animals and other creatures. And then this activity they will do around writing about an animal using poetry. And they are able to share their work live with other students online. And also Ms. Manuel will be doing drawings for prizes. So these are themes that will change throughout the summer. The same with our Math Maker space tile. The students will click on it. It will present students a challenge. So this challenge that they're currently engaged in is My Bridge is Stronger Than Your Bridge, where the students are challenged to create a bridge, and they're given some guidance. A video is provided. And then again, they get an opportunity to share what they created online. So when parents and students log in, open up their Chromebook, they will be taken directly to this APS Connected Learning Summer landing page. If they click on elementary right here, it'll take them to the elementary section. This section will take them directly to the secondary section. And then the last will take them to a section if they have questions. And I'm going to do that just to show you what that looks like. So for instance, once a parent gets on our landing page, if they run into any issues whatsoever, they can email connected@aps.org to get support, or they may call and leave a voicemail. Or if they have problems with their Chromebooks, Howard Lawson and his team have provided support at each of our high schools between the hours of 9:30 and 11, Monday through Friday, so that they can address issues with Chromebooks. So just to scroll you through, this is the elementary section that I just walked you through. And now Mark Black will take over to cover the areas for secondary learning.
Good evening, everyone. For secondary, Mary did a good job of giving you guys all the logistics about the web page and the landing platform. What I want to do is organize it for you guys in a way to support our enroll, enlist, and employ. As you know, those are the goals for us as we look at our APS graduates and our students who are rising into middle school. So what we did was, when we think about how we're getting students to examine, the way that we divided up the summer school was, when they're examining, they had to, for seniors and juniors, they had to examine their transcripts and determine where their gaps in learning have occurred. From there, they were able to sign up for, they could click on the tile and their counselors worked with them to sign up for our credit recovery program that started on June 8th. We have about 169 students taking courses right now to improve their transcript. So when they examined their transcript, they found that they may have been a half credit short in math, so they're cleaning that up right now. The other thing that we had our students examine was their skill deficits at the middle school level. So they took a diagnostic test to examine how far were they from being on grade level for reading, and how far were they from being able to critically think, communicate, collaborate, and be creative through math as well. So that's the platform that Mary talked to you guys about. That is the same. That's the bookshelf and the challenge. So our students are able to go there and to examine. But more importantly, we have a tile on there that's about iReady, as well as about our exact path. And those are things that are extension supports for our curriculum that we've already had in place. All students are familiar with it. Parents are familiar with it. So our students are comfortable with connecting over the summer if they have to do it independently or with the support of the teacher that's assigned to that particular focus area. So our students have had the opportunity to examine their transcripts, examine their skill levels, and determine what they need to access for the summer. The other piece is to explore. They had to explore what it is that they're trying to do within their pathway. So what our CCAA program has done is connected our students who are in the health pathway and the cosmetology pathway with outside partners, such as Kent State University. We'll be having a health academy where our students, we have about 51 students so far that have signed up for this program, where they're going to be able to partner with other students as well as Kent State University to determine this pandemic. So they'll be examining what caused the pandemic, how can we prepare to solve if this would happen again, and it'll be like a PDL for the students. For the cosmetology, we have students that are going to be going to Brookville High School starting, I believe, July 3rd or maybe after the 4th of July, pending health department approval. And they'll be going 10 students in the AM, 10 students in the PM, so that they can continue their skills towards getting their cosmetology certificate. Enhance is our last E. So we had students examine where they're at based on their transcript and skills. We had students explore based on their pathways. And now we have students that are trying to enhance through our APS Online. We have about 24, 25 students who have signed up to enhance their learning. And what I mean by that is advance their learning. So they may have to take PE in order to graduate. They're trying to get that out of the way so that they can free up their schedule during the school year so they can take other courses. So there's no conflict on their courses. They could take health as well. Some students may choose to take a government class. So through our APS Online, we're able to enhance students' learning as well as to get them to advance credits so that they're on track to graduate. So again, examine, we have a tool through our credit recovery, through our bookshelf, through our challenge, through our iReady, as well as through our exact path tile for students to click on and examine where they're at in their learning path. And then we have students able to explore with some of our partners, Kent State University being one, and Stark State is the other as it relates to the cosmetology, so that they can continue on their pathway, exploring their pathway and learning more about themselves in relation to relevant learning. And then enhance through our APS Online, where students can take a host of courses to advance their credit attainment. So that's what we have for secondary. I'm going to turn it over to Carla so she can talk about the get to school, stay in the game.
Good evening, everyone. Just as students are going to be accessing their summer learning through our APS Connected Learning site, we're going to be running parallel with the Get to School, Stay in the Game attendance call that this is a partnership between the Akron Public Schools, the Akron Education Association, and the Cleveland Browns Foundation. We were able to host a meeting in February, mid-February, of our large steering committee of many partners throughout the community. And then right before our second meeting, COVID hit. And so we had a little bit of a glitch, but we very quickly shifted to virtual. And our 4 teams have been working behind the scenes to launch this campaign beginning this month with visible displays, print materials, and social media posts. So you'll start to see those. I believe you were provided a PowerPoint presentation with more information about this. There is a placeholder here on the Connected Learning. This is where we will announce summer contests for students, where we will provide parents and families with information and support needed to stay in the game. The Browns Foundation will be shifting all of their work to a virtual platform as well, so there will be more incentives available to us. We are right now preparing to place yard signs in the 4,000 students who were actively participating in school this year. You'll see buses parked at our summer lunch sites with the banner, School, Stay in the Game. Beginning in the start of the school year, the month of September through June of next year, we'll launch our full year with ongoing messages for schools, for students, for staff, for families, and continue to use incentives to motivate students to participate in school, remain active, and engage in their learning. We'll be reaching out to board members with options campaign within the next coming weeks. At this time, I think we'll open it up for questions for either of us.
Yes, and I think we're going to start out with Dr. Hall.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. I appreciate the time spent. Let me just say from the outset, I think this was an eminently worthy use of our time as a board. I appreciate Ms. Kelly, Mr. Black, Ms. Chapman, the time they're taking to educate us on this. So I guess my question was, and I get that where the priorities sort of lie with respect to sort of making sure that folks our kids are basically have opportunities, to really get caught up. And I definitely applaud the examples that you gave around sort of the cosmetology opportunities. My question is, and if it was covered previously, you have my sincere apologies. Just point me towards it. But if I'm a gifted and/or talented student at the grade school, junior high, or high school level, and I have a desire to further enrich myself, again, trying to get ahead. A lot of private schools offer summer enrichment classes as well. Is there anything that would have fallen into that bucket? And again, I may have missed it, but again, just want to make sure that I sort of ask for clarification's sake for, again, gifted, talented students. Is there any programs that these tiles would have covered or would fall in for them?
At the elementary level, both of our early launch and our iReady summer programming is for all students, whether they're what we would call universal on grade level, or if they need extra support, what we would refer to as targeted or intensive or enriched. The program, based on the diagnostic, knows where the student is functioning, and it addresses where the kid is, right where they are academically, and pushes them forward. So if they are gifted, those activities that's aimed at that student would continue to enrich them.
Good question, Dr. Hall. I know we talk a lot about enlist, enroll, or employ. I just want to throw another plug out there for the 4th E of entrepreneurship. And we were kind of having a sidebar discussion about, and Dr. Akbar said exactly what I was thinking, which is we have so many kids right now that are social media entrepreneurs and other types of entrepreneurs that are ready. And Dr. Akbar also pointed out that many of our kids that graduate with licenses also have the opportunity to be entrepreneurs. So we just love to continue to push us to start including that 4th E of entrepreneurship. Mr. Alexander has a question.
Yes, my question for Mr. Black. First of all, let me thank all of you for giving us this presentation. It was very good. It is exciting. I get real excited and sometimes a little too excited about things like this when it's going to help our kids, but I think it's really good, the opportunities that they're going to have. But Mr. Black, I had a question. You mentioned cosmetology in Kent State and maybe Stark State doing some work with our students. What other areas? Are there other academic areas other than those couple areas you mentioned, or are those just two you mentioned that the kids can participate in this summer?
Yes, there's one other, and that is our HIPAA program, and that is for our seniors, and some of our underclassmen will have the ability to take advantage of that through the Rachel's Angels underclassmen. That's what we categorize them as, and if you guys are familiar with the Rachel's Angels. But for our rising seniors, we have the HIP program that starts June 15th. I'm sorry. And that is led by Katrina Halassa, and that's a partnership with the University of Akron and Kent State.
Okay. So there's just three areas that they can go into for the students this summer.
Yeah.
Basically. Yes,
for pathways that they want to extend. Yes.
Okay.
And Dr. Akbar, you're involved in the HIP program also?
Oh, I was previously, but I actually I was the Kent State representative for about 3 years for the district. But just this past Friday, the seniors did their presentation for HIP, and I had the great opportunity to serve as a judge for that program. And they came up with some outstanding solutions and presentations on what we can do differently. It was amazing. So, yeah.
Good. I hope you gave the edge to all of our kids.
And if I may, President Bravo,
yes.
I didn't get to respond to Dr. Hall's question about the advancement and gifted. I just want all you guys to know when we create our programs, we don't create them in silos of any student or any program or any school. We make sure that every student has an opportunity. Mary talked to you about our learning tree, the universal, the target, and the intensive. So when we speak about our programs, all students are able to tap into them. So when I mention APS Online for enhancement as well as advancement, that is definitely for all students. When we talk about our iReady and our Exact Path, that's for all students, because when you're examining yourself from where you are in the learning tree and where you're trying to go. And we have all of the resources for that for all students at each level.
Yeah, let me redirect just a bit, Mr. President, if I may.
Sure.
So part of the reason I asked that question, Mr. Black, Ms. Otley Kelly, was because I know that in the past, and I get that there can be differing interpretations to the state report cards, but I know that was an area of opportunity for us, was around the gifted and talented sort of programs and advancements for that group. So that's why I was asking that question. If what you're describing would be something that would qualify, to sort of satisfy that opportunity that's been identified in the report card around gifted and talented progress and programs for our students.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Any other comments?
Well, actually, no. I actually would like an answer on that, as to whether or not described would, in their estimation, satisfy that. That's again. I don't want to drop answer on that.
Yes, absolutely, especially for our students who are serving in all populations, but primarily for our gifted. When we adopted our math curriculum as well as our English curriculum, we made sure that it was a curriculum that is widespread, that will touch all students, because what we're trying to do is take away the fact that every student has to take an advanced class and let them know that through our curriculum, they can get advancement. So our curriculum, again, is broken down so that students who are universal get the stretch that they need. And that's why we do the diagnostic test, so that they can see where they are. And there's some students who do not know that they're gifted until they take those diagnostic tests, and then we bump them up. That's where we struggled in the past with our gifted ratings. We had students who were gifted not taking advantage of the gifted classes. And when we started the diagnostic test and the parents were able to see their students' capabilities, they were able to enroll. So we are changing that gap. And that was a gap that we had with students who were identified as gifted, not taking advantage or stretching themselves. And we have really done a great job over the past 2 years of making sure that we don't miss that boat. So yes.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
Dr. Akbar?
Yeah, I just have one other thing, since you brought that up about the diagnostic test for gifted. It's just one of the things that the research tells us about gifted programs when it comes to diversity, is that standardized diagnostic tests could be the biggest barrier to diversifying our gifted programs. So as we look at more that we can do to diversify our student populations in these programs, I just want to challenge you, Mr. Black, and the district to think of other ways beyond the diagnostic tests to identify students who are in gifted, who can be in gifted programs, because the diagnostic tests actually, based off research, has been as one of the ways that a lot of Black and Latino students specifically are left out.
Dr. McWilliams-Woods.
Mr. President, I did want to just join in on the conversation that we have done a lot of work around our gifted identification. That was an area that what you just described was our past history up until probably about 6 years ago, where it was based on one very single test score. The state, this is an advocacy piece. The state has a lot of restrictions on how to identify gifted, but we've been able to take advantage more of the talented part as well, instead of gifted and talented, to round out how we identify and to make sure that we're not just solely looking at one measure like we used to. And that has dramatically increased and provided a lot more equity across all of our schools in terms of the number of students identified. It sounds like at a future meeting, we should probably take a look at our gifted programming, since this has come up a number of times.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Dr. McWilliams-Woods, in the fall, coming to a board meeting prior to being through a presentation on that report. That was an area of opportunity for us, and so it sounds like it's an area for a while now, for reasons that you just kind of laid out. So yeah, I do think it'd be worth kind of revisiting at a later time. But thank you for weighing in, and thank you for your
Thank you for the questions, Dr. Hull. Anything else for instructional policy and student achievement? I did, Dr. Akbar. Dr. Hall, there was a question as to whether or not everyone heard your last comments. Would you care to recap those again if you can, please?
Sure. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Because his screen is frozen. I just want to make sure that he can hear me. No, I was just saying that that board meeting in the fall, prior to the election taking place, and done by folks who are on the call tonight that sort of talk through that report card. And I know that gifted and talented was an area of opportunity then as well. And it sounds like it's been an area of opportunity for a while, and that there's been a lot of work that's been done, in sort of recent history to really try to address that. Saying is that I think it does sort of merit, because I think this is, as Dr. McWilliams-Woods referenced, this has come up a couple of times in our meetings. So I do think it makes sense, and I would find it informative if we could sort of revisit this topic again in a later date or in a subsequent meeting, because again, I think that we don't want to forget about those gifted and talented students as well. So ensuring that we've got things in place for them. So again, it's not perfect. I get it, and I get that there's some methodology sort of that we've kind of alluded to. So that's why I think it's worthwhile for us to kind of to unpack this in a more robust fashion as we sort of move forward. And then I thanked Dr. McWilliams-Woods for her an eloquent response to
and your audio stopped, Derek, but I think we got everything that you said. And the last thing that we heard was thanking Dr. Ellen McWilliams-Woods. Is there anything else for the Instructional Policy and Student Achievement Committee? All right, hearing none, then we will continue. Is there any unfinished business? I do have some unfinished business because when I was reading my president's report earlier, I neglected to flip the page. So I have a couple, three quick things very quickly. Piling on to the thank yous, I also want to say thank you to Councilwoman Tara Mosley Samples for her work. Also, I had received outreach from a school district all the way in Alabama regarding our policy declaring racism as a public health crisis. And so I just wanted to point that out. Had a really nice conversation last week with a gentleman from a school district in Alabama, just slightly southwest of Birmingham. Great conversation, sending him some resources, our resolution as well as County Council's resolution. But it was nice to hear, and to the conversation earlier about being first in the nation. Again, I might add, because Akron has tended to be first in the nation for a lot of things. But to be first in the nation for this, and then to be outreach that we're getting from people across the country about what we did is pretty phenomenal. So kudos to all of you. And then the last thing I wanted to mention as part of my president's report was we had recently approved a contract with a local company to help us track, as we typically do, our EDGE and MBE goals and requirements for our construction projects. And I had a great conversation today with another elected leader in the community, and we were talking about this very type of thing and how we tend to track and monitor the EDGE and MBE requirements, but about, is there room for us to be more creative in how we set our goals to attract and to attract minority and women-owned contractors to the kind of work that we do? Are there teeth that we can put into those types of contracts? So I just want to encourage us as we move forward to be thoughtful about those types of things, especially because we're in one of those projects and we're monitoring those projects as they move on. And it certainly won't be the last project that we have, but it's an area that, we constantly get the reports on, but I would like to see us be more creative around what we can do to attract those types of contractors to do work with us. We have a lot of work to be done, and that's everything from purchasing supplies to constructing buildings. So just one more area where, maybe even in the finance committee or something, we can talk about those types of opportunities. So with that being said, is there any other unfinished business to come before the board? Is there any new business to come before the board? All right, we do have a need to recess into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code section 121.22G3 for legal counsel to discuss disputes involving the board that are the subject of pending or imminent court action, and also section 121.22G4 to review negotiations or bargaining sessions with employees concerning compensation and other terms of employment. So do I have a motion for executive session?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Mr. Alexander, a second from Ms. McKittrick. Are there any final comments, questions, or discussion before we recess into executive session? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Akbar? Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick?
Yes.
Thank you.
For those in the public that will be that are watching this, we are going to recess into executive session. We will leave this meeting. Board members, please make sure that you completely log out of this meeting before entering executive session, and then we'll return to this meeting after we conclude executive session. Thank you. Thank you and welcome back to the regular board meeting for June 22nd, 2020. We have one item of business before we adjourn, and that is item 32.1, resolution, an MOU with OPSI 689 regarding the I Promise School hiring process. Do we have a motion on that resolution?
So move. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Ms. Mansfield and a second from Mr. Alexander. Nope.
I think that was Diana.
Was it Diana?
Ms. Autry.
Thank you, Ms. Autry. Any comments, questions, or concerns or discussion on the OPSI agreement? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick?
Yes.
Dr. Akbar?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Is there any other business to come before this board tonight? Hearing none, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Well.
Bye.
Bye.